Assalamu alaikum. How are you, class? Hope so you are doing good. And in today's lecture, we have a talk over origins of language, and we know that language is a means of communication. It's a way of communication, and sometimes we say that it's a system, set of symbols, and signs and gestures that may help us while communicating or while exchanging information. But there is a question in our mind that it must be one situation, or it must be one language at the beginning of human beings. It's a common notions. It's a common notions, and sometimes we think or we ponder over that it must be one language at the beginning of this human beings, or at the beginning of this universe. Definitely, it would be a one language at the beginning of the time, but how this language converted into different languages, or there is one root word belonging to the one language, and we have a different question, and we know very well that not to talk about the too much beyond of the history, but if we take a look over that Indo-European tree of a language, and we see there are almost five languages, or that might cause to the emergence of the different languages of this earth. And it's a common notion, or it's a common practice that language may be changed according to the uh, situation, or according to the place, and according to the migration that they took, according to their need and desired. In today's lecture, we will talk about what were the basic theories of the origins of languages, and how much they are, and how these different concepts are prevailed in our society, and what we have commonly, what we have general perspective about the origin of language. So let's discuss, or let's move on toward the theories of language. And we know very well almost it's or these are the six of the different theories that may or that might play a vital role while defining the origin of language. We have a lot of other ones as well, but the most prominent of from them, that we have six ones. Let's talk over. We have a theories of the origins of language. Sorry for that. The first theory that is considered the theory of origin of language, the Bobo theory. It's based on the notion that speech across through people imitating the sounds of environment, especially animals, calls, the use of onomatopoeic words. It's totally under the dependent that we change the sound, and we imitate the sounds just according to the environment that we have in our surroundings. And it's the basic concerns of the Bobo theory. It's dependent on the perceptions of animals, and this theory put the examples of animals that they produced, and they called different sounds at the different positions where they are actually. It's totally dependent that how we utilized, how the animals utilized the situations, uh, and they produce sounds according to that environment, and they relate that concept to the human beings, and they consider that as animal calls different sounds and imitate different sounds according to the environments, so human beings as well imitated the sounds and imitates the sounds according to the environment that they require. And these sounds converted into different words, and with the passage of times they considered that the language emerges from the situations. But after that, we have a second theory of over the origins of language, the Popo theory. It's based on the evidence that speech arose through people making instinctive sounds, and this theory, the basic concerns of this theory is that we are instinctively awarded the capability of producing the sounds, and they put the notion on the most important aspect of the nature, that we are bound to produce different sounds. But it's too much different from the theory of Bobo theory. But in the third theory, the ding dong theory, that postulates the speech across people because people reacted to the word around them, or it's totally correlated, or it's sometimes associated with the theory of Bobo theory, the ding dong theory and the Bobo theory, that may be correlated, or sometimes they put the same directions. They put their theories out over to the same directions. Just they and Bobo theory, they utilize the examples of animals, but in ding dong theory they didn't utilize the example of animals, but the representations and overall structures of their theory is somehow related to that. And this in ding dong theory, that speech are the productions, or is the productions of the world that is around us. As in Bobo theory, they consider the speech as the production of the imitating sound of the environment mean that where we are. But in the fourth one, the Yo-hi-ho theory, based on the notion that speech arose from physical environments needs, which produce communal rhythmical grunts, which later on developed into the chants. But it's somehow little bit different. But it's also based on the environmental situations, that where the sound is correlated to the situation, that the situation where we are actually. In the later tradition, the Lala theory provides that if any signal factors was responsible to initiate human language, it would be romantic side of human life, and that they considered that there were some factors that may cause a human to imitate a language, or it was or really a romantic side of human language or human life. But it's also somehow dependent on the factors of the nature, that some accidentally it's happened that there were some signals that may factor and make the human responsible to imitate some language or sounds. But there are different approaches, scientific evolutionary approaches, gloss genetics, the study of the formation and development of human language. But in the evolutionary approaches, the most prominent study that we say in the origin of language, that was discussed in about that was discussed in Cro-Magnon man, that or Neanderthals mans, or they consider that it was happened to the almost 30,000 BC before Christ, and the modern man. And now that this they had a notion that there is no direct correlation between the size of the brain and the use of language, where the primitive man had the physiological capacity to speak, or definitely they considered that all the person that they have a brain, they might be capable enough to speak, or they capable enough to divert the language. But it's not the discussion of that we want to discuss. These are the basic theories that may they described their concept related to the origin of language. But my question is still there, that when and how the languages emerges, and what was the time, or what was the situation, or what was the tenure track of this word when there was one single language at the time, or when human being considered all one as a universal language. But the question is remains same, that let's move on. Hope so we will capable enough to find out the question, the answer of the question, that when and why this language emerges into different languages. Just to see the structures of humans, cast of the nasal, oral, and pharyngeal ear passages, or passages of a newborn baby and the adult Japanese and an adult man, just see there are some little bit association. There are almost the same situation of the humans pharyngeals, where the ears passes, that may help us to produce the different sounds. And if you take a look at an adult Japanese, and that we see that the structure of the oral and nasal pharyngeal ears, where the ears passes through, not too much different from the newborn baby, that they had almost the upper part, both of the adult chimpanzees and that newborn baby had seen. Even in adult men, we find a little bit variations in the presence of these things. As we see that there is no difference between in adult chimpanzees and newborn baby, that they have flat over to the downsize. Both of the nasals are as totally flat from the situations. So they are not in a position to speech. But in human language, we see that there is ups and downs, and that there is we see the difference in the pattern of an adult man's nasal, oral, and pharyngeal point from where the ear is passes through. So man is capable enough to speech. That it's the basic reason to speech of human beings. But it's these are the scientific notions, that these are the philosophical aspects of human language emergence. But we know very well, if we talk about with reference to the Islamic history, that we know very well Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who creates man, or he also makes him capable enough to speak. It's the gifted qualities. But another difference we see in our nasal cavity and vocal cord and oral cavity that we have in pharynx and vocal folds. But it's also helpful while producing the language. But this is a picture that cause us to speak a language from where the ears play a vital role while producing the sounds and while producing the specific words from human minds. But we have another concept that we considered as what as homologans. Human vocal tract evolved from a non-human primitive. Speech is not merely the result of a system designed for breathing and eating. Just do remember, speech is not merely the result of a system, but it's also a development of the things that we are not in a position to consider. Developmental evidence: modern men can choke from food lodged in the larynx, monkey cannot. But it's the practical example that men can chops and men can choke the food lodged into the larynx, but monkey cannot, because they had no capability, and they have no capability while choking the food into their larynx. But be clear about the thing: the speech has a survival values. Or while hominids having human-like vocal tracts as far back as 2 lakh thousand before, but not sufficiently developed a nervous system to control it. But as we have a man, scientific research found that there are some, or there were some of the hominids that considered just like human. They have the same vocal tract as the human has today, but they are not in a position. They were not in a position to control their sounds. But again, I am telling you people that it's not the exact position, but it's a philosophical and the scientific aspects of the human language. But we know very well that from where and how the languages emerges in our societies. Just try to imitate the things that we have in these slides. We have three different possibilities and viewpoints that may cause or the result of origin of the language, that may help us to move forward to the region of languages. As I put a question in the starting, that what were the reasons behind the distribution and the prolonging of the languages, and when and how or we shuffle from one universal languages that we have. But do monogenesis views consider that all languages have diverged from a common source, and it's the common, or it's the common practice, or it's the common notion that all the things comes from a one single aspect of the universe. So the languages, all the languages came out from one original languages and one original sources of the language of the universe at the time of the beginning. The result of the cultural evaluation or divine interventions, the difference in languages because of the wave of migration and from language universe. At the beginning, we have one language that might be considered that it's a language of universe, but as the people migrate from one area to another area, it might be possible that they shuffle the sounds, and over the passage of time, that sounds may change into the words, and that words may be considered as their own languages. As we see in one picture, that origin of language, that we have one at the starting point, but from there we find that there are different language emergence of the trees that we have in our life. But hope so it would one possibility, or one possible point of view, that languages may be emerged from one single source, or that is one language and the origin of language. So, but we have another two sources as well, possible point of view, that we have second view that we consider, that is the totally opposite of the monogenesis, is the polygenesis, the opposite view of the monogenesis. The language emerged more or less simultaneously in several places. They consider that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 languages may be the result of the accidental situations, and that they from starting point of view, they consider that at the beginning that the people had different languages, 4 to 5 languages that might cause while distributing and while multiplying this concept of languages from 1 to, they might be possible that 1 is divided into 1.1 and 1.2, or just like see that we have in our slides, that language 1 may be further divided in L1.1 and L1.12, so that 2 is further divided into 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and 3 further divided in 3.4 and 3.2. Or we have also the fourth language, 4.1 and 4.2 and 4.3, but they totally opposite. In monogenesis concept, the possibility that the one language is at the beginning, that there is a one language, but in polygenesis they consider that at the beginning we have a different languages. Languages universal are the result of the constraint which must have operated upon the early speakers, environmental or psychological. Convergence as a group who came into contact, their languages would influence each other's, and that starting from they had different languages, and from influencing of from one language to another language, they may result into the different languages of the universe, and we now reach into the present situation that we have thousands of languages in the universe. A third possibility that they cause that third possibility involving vast time scale, all existing language may indeed have diverged from a common source. It's correlated to the first monogenesis concept, but this may have been just one line of descent from an earlier era when several independent languages emerged. And it might be possible that at the beginning they have origin of language, but from different languages that emerge from one sources, and one language may be might be in a position to follow the pattern and the rules and norms and custom of the origin of language, while other languages left these customs, and independently they started working over them, and they emerged their own languages with the passage of times. These are the possibilities of the language that we have, but to remember, it's necessary for us to find out the history, or to know a little bit more about the origin of languages. After that, human language would generalized clucks and grunts be universally understood among all members of the same species. It's the question that either we are in a position to find out the common clunks and grunts that may be the core cause of speaking a language is in all the same species. But these two elements of language can be set off against each other in a series of permutations and combinations to generate language endlessly in a framework which is both rule governed and open ended. We know that language is not an open ended situation, it's a rule governed situation. So we can never write while open ended, while putting a focus over the open ended situations. But language, commonly accepted set of words, and the second aspect of language, commonly accepted system of organizing words. Sometimes we just do some important, we just put some important over the things that language is governed by the rules of systems. No doubt language is accepted system of organizing words, while commonly accepted set of words is another aspect of human language. It's so you have to consider that origin of language is an open question that we are not in a position to say, or we are not in a position to answer that what a language actually is. So try to imitate and try to find out other resources from different books and internets that may help us to find out the some comprehensive talk over the origin of language. Human language is much flexible and complete than animal language, even that of advanced animals. Language differ from one another, but their operating principles are the same. It's a common feature that a language have. All old languages were capable of doing everything. People spoke languages long before writing systems were developed. All people functions on a binary system of utterance. Language has inbuilt mechanism for change, adaptation, synthesis, and compromise. Body gesturing, especially the element of stress and intonations, are important in human communication. Also grow side by side with the language. But do remember, it's a practical implementation that language is a system and it's governed by the mechanics. But it's a change with the passage of time, and we learn different concepts and with different theories that we have in our today life. So